Okay, good morning, everyone. So today we're going to learn a little bit of the two stories that we were learning through the different activities that we did on T-Box. So right now we're going to be working on the Dragon River, and as well, we're going to be working on what's evolution. So right now, let's go and let's see what this story is about. The story of the Dragon River is a folk tale that is a traditional story that some cultures in particular have. For example, that means that the story that we're reading, that is the River Dragon, is a story from China. And in our cases, we have folklore stories similar to this one, like for example, La Ciguanaba, El Cipitillo, El Cadejo, and many others, right? That are totally the same to this one. And what happens with this one is that it is a retelling from a folklore of China. So that means that this one is another person telling again the story. Dragons are popular figures in Chinese culture, and they are mythological gods of the rivers and the heavens. They are often pictured holding a magical pearl in their mouth, and this story suggests why. So the story that we're going to read is going to tell us why it is common that we see that dragons have that little pearl either on the mouth or in the hand. And if you remember that the protagonist of the story is Xiaolong, he was a kid from a poor village in which plants didn't grow. According to the story, there were many days in which the plants didn't grow in the village, right? So he had to walk really far away in order to get some plants, some water, some rice to keep his family going on. So what happened with Xiaolong is that one day while he was traveling, he found a house that had a lot of green grass, and the grass was always growing over there, and it was always beautiful. So one day he decided to take some of that grass from that house and take it home. But what happened was, as you see on the screen right there, is that he opened the soil. So that means that he opened the ground. And then when he opened the ground, he found a magic pearl. He thought that the pearl was magical because it was shining, and as well it was helping just all the grass that was around it grow. So what happened was is that he took the pearl, right? He took the pearl home and he wanted to show it to his mother, right? Because he assumed it was magical and he thought that it would be a great gift for his mom. So he took it with him. He took it back home, and then I will tell you the following. Then after when he went back home, they started experiencing a period in which everything was really growing. The grass in the house was growing, the rice, because something interesting with Xiaolong is that he hid the pearl in a jar that contained rice. So in that jar, the rice was multiplying and everything. And what happened was that in that rice, he was having a lot of rice. So the people started asking, what is the problem with this house? What is the problem with this kid? Why is his house the only one with a lot of grass? And why he is the one that doesn't need to go to the market to buy rice? So people were so curious about it that they started chasing Xiaolong. And Xiaolong, he was forced, well, he tried to hide the pearl on his mouth, and by mistake, the people, when they're trying to chase him, he swallowed it. When he swallowed the pearl, remember that he felt like a big fire on his chest, right? And he felt like he was burning, and he tried to run away until he found a lake that was near the town. And in that lake, what happened was, is that if you remember, he started drinking water, and then he noticed that something was changing. From his nose, there was a lot of smoke coming out. And then he discovered that he became the dragon. The people started running away scared when they saw that. And what happened after that is that Xiaolong got the powers of a dragon because the pearl was magical, and he started sending rain to the place where they live. So basically, he was trying to help the people of the village by sending rain to help them out to grow all the different plants, and so they can have rice again, they can have plants again, and everything. Something that I want you to remember as well, that then he saw that he couldn't control the rain. So in order for making sure that the village had the water that they needed, instead of making the rain, he became the river that flows around the land of where they live. So according to the legend, that river is still there and he's still protecting his town. So that's the reason why this story is really interesting, because he could become a dragon and he was using a magical object. But as you see, is Really, really interesting. So now we're going to jump to the other story that we have been working on as well. That is, what is evolution? And in the evolution story, we have this little uh, cover page that it says that it is an informational text. It is a text that informs readers about a story, either science or other subjects. And in this case, what is evolution is an article about the theory of evolution and natural selection. So over here, we're going to start the story with Charles Darwin, okay? Charles Darwin was a person that he was traveling around the world. And when he traveled around the world, he started observing differences in many animals, for example, in birds. He mentioned that some birds in some parts of the world have different characteristics that they didn't have in other parts of the world. Or some kinds of birds have some characteristics that others didn't have. So what happens was that he started observing all these kinds of birds, taking notes about their difference and everything. And after that, he sent them to some friends of him that were able to examine them and discover that they were totally different. So based on this, he created the theory that all the living beings, all the animals, species come from a common ancestor. For example, from this theory is that Darwin created three concepts. The first one is heritability, which describes that a species inherit the combination of the parents' genes. This means that when you are born, if you take a look at yourself, you probably have the characteristics of your mom and some characteristics of your dad, or probably your brother has some characteristics of either your mom and your dad. But what happens is that you may be similar to both of them, but you are not exactly the same. Because since you are a combination of both, that means that you are not an exact copy of your mom or your dad, nor the other species. There are some exceptions, for example, like bacteria and microorganisms that they can be the exact same copy, but in our cases, we are not. And in the case of most species, they are not the exact same copy, which means that we are different than the original. In other words, that means that you are not your dad or your mom is not you. You are a different person, you are your own, and as well other animals. For example, if a lion has a baby lion, that baby lion is going to be a different animal and it's not going to be the same. It is always going to be the same species, yes, but it's not going to be the exact same animal. Then he described that some species are different depending on the environment they live in. He based his theory on the concept of a niche, which represents a specific ecosystem in which creatures have adapted to different conditions. Take a look at the picture that is on the screen right now, and you will see that you have a tortoise that is from dry land, and we have another one that is from rainy island. The difference is not only in color and probably in the size of the neck, but one of them can live in water and the other one can just live in land. So that means that one of them is able to swim and the other one's not. Another example is that if, for example, if you go to an aquarium and you will see a little turtle that is over there and they are the kind of turtles that are only on water. What happens over there is that they are not able to live in land. And when they go to land, they don't have the feet that they need to move on the land. We have some other examples of these ones as well with different types of animal. We were mentioning, for example, that crocodiles may be different in different species. And if you start observing, then you will discover that many different animals that are from the same type have differences. And that's why, because there are many reasons why. First, because of the food they eat at a certain place that they live in, the weather conditions that they live in. For example, polar bears, they have a different type of, well, a different type of body than the ones that live in a mountain or in the forest, because the polar bears, they have a layer of fat that helps them resist the cold weather. That's why they are able to live in those places. Another example is the Galapagos penguin, that they don't live in cold places at all, okay? So with that, Darwin described that the process of adapting to changes on the environment is called the natural selection. As well, he proposed that all the species come from a common ancestors. Basically, he's telling you that the natural selection process is the process in which nature selects which of the following animals or species are the most suitable to survive in the environment. That's why animals evolve and all these species evolve. They have characteristics that they didn't have thousands or millions of years ago because they developed those characteristics to survive in the nature that they are. This is natural selection. Of course, there are some cases of some animals, like for example, where the environment doesn't change, they don't need to evolve. That means that they remain the same and they don't change at all. That is one of the reasons why it is really important to keep that in mind. Another thing that he proposed is that all the species come from a common ancestor. So that means that all of the species, all of the animals and different human beings and everything, we come from a common ancestor, that it was a species, probably was a bacteria that then evolved into another kind of water living creature. Then he became a creature that was able to walk on land, and then he continued evolving until we are on the process that we are today, okay? And with that, also comes some changes. For example, some of the changes that I'm telling you is that Darwin describes that a nice example of natural selection is animals are able to camouflage with the environment they live in. For example, a chameleon, as you have seen before, a chameleon can take many colors, as you can imagine. He is able to change his appearance at will depending on the place in which he's touching or sitting. And in the case of moth, they can camouflage their wings. They, for example, with trees or rocks or things like those ones that help them to hide so they can survive in the environment. And that's basically the review of the two stories. For the next week, we're going to start talking about the herd baby. We're going to read it together in the session. And as well, we're going to go over the important details of it. That's it for this video. And I hope that you have learned. I hope that you have understood. And I will see you on the next